All tests should be open book because it's more important to know where to find the correct answer, than to memorize half of it. Let's face it, every time you have had a question after you graduated school you ask someone and they either told you the answer, or where to find the answer. Most people won't belittle you for not knowing. Quizzes could be a tool used for retention of the subject at hand and can be closed book. I believe it's more beneficial to know where to find the supporting documentation to seek more in-depth answers than it is to memorize a small portion of it. Imagine taking this notion to, say, medical school students. Nope, you don't need to actually know all these things about human anatomy, because you can just Google it, right? LOL. That's crazy. In order to master a body of knowledge, you must retain a good bit of information about it. Think of a video game, you can read the guides and study the mechanics, but you're usually not going to be good at playing until you've committed those mechanics to memory and can call upon your knowledge of them at will. In some situations, yes, sure. In others, not so yes. Asterisk in a time of internet access. Earlier days you didn't have access to all world's knowledge by typing 3 words in the Google search bar, so you had to remember certain things. Now, where we have internet, we don't need to anymore, but the school system hasn't advanced to this drastic change. Honestly, no, it shouldn't. At some point you need a basis for learning. You think physicists could become physicists if they had to look up the basic rules of algebra all the time? Absolutely not. You need to have things memorized to an extent. I do agree with this opinion on some subjects though. If I was a doctor and during a surgery I had to Google stuff, well, it would be bad. In certain subjects that's certainly debatable. But in others, like mathematics, not so much. Admittedly, I am studying in an Italian university, but I can say with confidence that the required knowledge, even pre-university level, is not as simple as to be something everybody knows, or that you can understand in a few seconds. No, it's important that you can recite an entire encyclopedia. It teaches you respect. I think that you are stabbing at the heart of the problem. If your test is simply recovering memories of factoids, you are doing it wrong. The best tests are the ones where the information isn't in question but the problem you need to solve is a novel one. That is how you evaluate if someone has learned, present a unique situation and see if the student applied the learned material appropriately. They do this for the Red Hat Linux certifications. They give you an interface with all the man pages, man equals manual, they leave the manual available to you, because as you said, if you can just look up the factoid, why bother making you memorize it? It is more important to remember that the factoid is important in the first place. All tests, no. I get your point, and agree to some extent, but some knowledge is important to have on demand. As a student about to graduate with a bachelor's degree in engineering in a few days, I think introductory classes should definitely be closed book. The point of those classes is to teach knowledge. But higher level classes should be teaching skills and application of knowledge, and benefit from use of other resources. Posts like this make it so obvious the sub is mostly teenagers LMAO. As a computer engineering major, open note/book means the test is designed to not require said notes and thus ends up way harder. Closed note is always better, as long as the required formulas are given, which they always are if there's an excessive amount of them. Trust me, that's actually a pretty good point. Maybe if we had all tests like a 2-part test, yes and no. I think you need to be able to look up the answer, but at the same time you have to know what to look up. On an exam, it's very simple. Just look up the question. But on the other hand, the real world isn't quite as neat as that. There are questions out there that you can't find on Google, and that you have to find for yourself. Or you might not even know what you want to ask, so you have to look at the basics. The way I see it, you learn the basics so you learn or discover the advanced stuff. The bar exam has changed a bit since I took it, but the idea of giving legal answer analysis/answers closed book had to be the silliest thing I have ever done. Imagine a client coming in and saying, I have this very pressing legal question, but please do not research it, please just work off memory. I mean, I guess I could see them saying please don't bill for it. Well, when it comes to concepts I'd disagree, but when it comes to implementation I then agree. A good example of this is understanding how software development works but not having to know all the syntax to every language. Also, never in your entire existence will a boss at your job tell you can't look something up. Do you mind if your doctor whips out his cell phone to check on what your symptoms might mean? Or should he have that memorized? Depends on the nature of the material. If it's useless facts, sure, I can understand that. If it's critical thinking, applying a procedure, connecting events with similarities/differences, recognizing cause/effect, or the why, to a particular subject, then it should probably be closed book. If anything, maybe the amount of material to recall per test could be decreased to allow individuals to focus on the more hard-hitting material that will actually help you learn and not just regurgitate the book. A general understanding of a field is expected, but once you begin to focus within that field is when you really need to learn. I disagree. Why would I need to know where to find the answer and then memorize only half of the answer? I think it's good to have basic understanding of basic concepts like adverbs and conjunctions. You can't look those up every time you post something. I disagree, but I do think you should be allowed to take handwritten notes in. We had workbook tests at university, where we could bring the large workbook we could fill throughout the year. Some people couldn't be bothered to fill them out, so were at a huge disadvantage. It was good because at some point you were capable of answering the question and it didn't rely on you being able to remember the huge chemistry syllabus. Then. This is the same reasoning that anti-vax people use and flat earthers use to deny scientists/doctors. Not all information can be found on the internet. Tests in higher impact jobs are that way because you routinely do not have the time to look up what to do. As a university professor, I both agree and disagree with this opinion, but I do definitely agree that it is not a popular opinion among faculty members. The issue comes down to the creation of exam questions. This is one of the hardest parts of my job. There are only so many good questions. And when I am strapped for time, sometimes I use questions from textbooks, or I use questions inspired by the ones in the textbooks. Having the exam fully open book makes those questions trivial and thus not useful, and increases the amount of time I have to spend. A recent study shows that university professors typically work 50 to 60 hours per week, so adding to that is not something a professor wants to do, especially for something that has effectively zero impact on their job progression. In summary, these kinds of things will start happening when there is any incentive for professors to put more time and effort into teaching. But university administrations and granting bodies don't care.